Game Access is the epic game development conference in Central Europe, bringing together hundreds of developers, artists, designers, and gaming enthusiasts from all over the world to Brno each year. It's a vibrant hub where top AAA creators and indie developers meet to share experiences, gain inspiration, and explore the latest trends in the gaming industry. Through engaging talks, hands-on workshops, and valuable networking opportunities, Game Access connects seasoned professionals, industry veterans, and aspiring talents to collectively push the boundaries of game creation even further.
Well, the game dev community in the Czech Republic and Slovakia is super friendly, right? It generally is all around the world, but there's something a bit, it's almost brotherly in these countries.
There are many interesting games, many interesting people to talk to.
It's excellent events to get brutally honest feedback from fellow developers.
This is the original big box for Deus Ex from the year 2000, signed by Warren Spector, here on Game Access.
Time to rock and roll.
The fact that games I've worked on are still remembered and still talked about and remastered and played is astonishing to me. It is, frankly, one of the most important success criteria I have. There are a lot of ways in which I measure success, but making things that people care about and don't just forget, don't just play and put aside and play something else. What could be cooler than that? I love the fact that System Shock is still a thing, 30 years after it debuted, and Deus Ex 24 years now, and Epic Mickey 15 years. That's real success to me, and I would trade a lot of other people's definitions of success for that.
So what was Deus Ex really about? For me, it was about 4 questions. Like I said, games ask questions. They often make statements. My games, and I hope some of your games, ask questions. So the first one was, what happens if you put a character, a player, in a world that's all shades of gray? He thinks it's black and white, but as the game goes on, he realizes that things are a little more complex than he thought. What if conspiracies were true? If every conspiracy in the real world were true, what would it be like and how would you feel about it? What does it mean to be human? I ask that question all the time. I don't know, I really like that question. Deus Ex is a world where humans are augmented, mechanically augmented and then bioengineered. And so when do you stop being human and become something that humans fear? And how should the world be? This is my favorite. If you've played Deus Ex, spoiler, there are 3 endings. And you have to decide which one you think is right. And you do that based on interaction with the non-player characters throughout the game, who all have a different opinion about what the world should be. Should it be ruled by a shadowy elite conspiracy? Should it be plunged into a new dark age where free will is the important thing? Should it be run by an AI, a sentient AI? I also like sentient AIs. With complete connection but no free will. What's the right answer? Okay, and no one will ever know what I think. Okay.
The reason I think it's important to ask questions in games rather than make statements is because we can. in linear media, in traditional media, movies, television, radio, ballet, concerts, you name it, there is a singular or group author, and they have a point of view. I've written novels, I've written comic books, I've written choose your own adventure stories, and in those I get to express what I think about something. My novel, it came out in 1987, which freaks me out. It's in part about climate change, and you get to learn what I think about climate change. Now, if I make a game about climate change, I can say, what do you think about climate change? What do you think is the right answer to climate change? And then players can enact their answer through play. We can do that. No other medium in the history of humankind can do that. So in my mind, we have an obligation to do that. We want to figure out what makes us different and unique and exploit that. And that's the secret to turning us from an oddity into a real art form that the world appreciates. The most important thing, I think, is to never give up. It's a very tough business to get into, especially now when there have been so many people laid off. There are a lot of people looking for new jobs, and so young developers without experience are going to have a hard time. The best advice I can give is never give up. If this is your passion, if this is what you really want to do, you can't be scared off. You have to keep going. You also have to know who you are. You need to know what kinds of games you love and want to make. You have to know whether you want to be an indie or work at a large studio. If you want to be an indie, you need to be a generalist, so learn a lot of things. If you want to work in the AAA space, you need to specialize, not just as a designer, but as a systems designer or a narrative designer or a gameplay designer or an AI designer. So know who you are and what your goals are, and then never give up.
The conference has been great. Yeah, it's been really cool just to kind of see the whole vibe and atmosphere of it. Everybody just seems to be really enthusiastic, and just a good variety of games being shown, and the different booths offering different tool sets and community-based stuff in different parts of Europe, and it's really cool to kind of get that perspective. We're really excited to bring the concert with myself and the Tiberian Sons, performing the Command and Conquer music live, and yeah, it's going to be a great production. The first Command & Conquer felt very special. While we were making it, the whole team felt like we had something special. We didn't know how successful it would be, but we just knew that it was fun and that we had something kind of magical going on, and we were going out of our way to try different things to see what would work and what wouldn't. And I remember, sitting in an office with the president and the audio director and just bouncing ideas off of each other about the music. Like, what should this be? Let's listen to this band, let's listen to that band, let's listen to this movie soundtrack. How about just a piece of this song? See this piece right here? See what those instruments are doing? We kind of like that. And then I just made notes of all of those things, went back to my office, and I wrote a whole variety of different stuff, not thinking it all would get used. I just thought maybe they would, we'd like this one, and this one, and let's go that direction. But instead, they said, we'll throw it all in. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. So that's why it's so diverse, that first one. It has so many different styles. When we got to Red Alert, that got a bit more refined. I felt like I found more of my sound with that because they wanted me to keep it still contemporary, even though it was an alternate history sort of, fun spin-off. And so I went more industrial with it and, kind of had that good hybrid of synth and guitar work and industrial samples, and that kind of became more of a definitive sound for Red Alert. When we got to Tiberian Sun, I thought it was going to be a proper sequel to the music style of CNC, but instead they changed their mind about that. They wanted something more ambient, moody, post-apocalyptic, and so I was like, okay, I got to rethink this now. So then I had to figure out what that sound would be, but still make it relative to CNC. That was a bit of a challenge. I remember, kind of going through that. And then getting into like Firestorm was fun because that's when they wanted to make things, a little bit more upbeat again, kind of more of the original CNC sound back with that. And plus we had Cabal as the main character so it was fun to build some more like machine computerized, sounds into the CNC palette of instruments and make something cool out of that to complement that faction. Then getting into Red Alert 2, it was fun to revisit that sound and make it, just evolve that forward, and make it a little more oomph, a little more punch to it. That was a lot of fun. What drives me after all these years? I mean, now I think I just embrace the idea of, anything that can be unique or have a cool spin on it. I'm really inspired when I play games that are just very different now. Different from the norm or not just another copycat of something else, like games like Cuphead were like great for the stylistic approach, or games like Ori and the Blind Forest, I really loved Conan Exiles, I played that quite a bit because I loved the whole building factor where you could make realistic looking castles after a certain time, of getting all your materials together, stuff like that was really awesome.
I've come so far.
What do I think of when I think of Shadow of the Tomb Raider? I think of a wild year where I jumped onto the project and started developing story and writing quickly, and then had to go to Los Angeles almost like 1 or 2 weekends a month for almost a year. I got to see my friends in Los Angeles almost more than my friends at home because we were working around the shooting schedule of the actress Camilla, who was also in Grey's Anatomy. And we got that game done, I think, in record time at the end. And it was a really fun experience, but totally not what I expected. Assassin's Creed Liberation started with walking into the producer's office to be welcomed onto the project, and he said, can you go to Bulgaria next week? And I said, why? And in the end, I did not have to go to Bulgaria next week, but I did end up going to Bulgaria several times over the next few years because I was partnered with the Ubisoft studio in Sofia, Bulgaria for a few projects, both for Assassin's Creed Liberation and for, I think, side content on Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Anyway, that was also wonderful because I got to meet the team in Sofia, and that was a very special game because we got to make a game with a female protagonist, and I got to learn so much about Saint-Domingue, which is now Haiti, and the revolution there, as well as the Spanish part of Louisiana in American history, which I think is sort of less well known in the way we study history in North America.
So, stop me if these seems obvious, but the first step to working on established IP is to get hired to work on the established IP. I feel like it used to be more common for brands to expect or hope that developers would be fans of the IP before working on them.
No, I mean, one of the first things I say in my talk is that I don't think that you need to be a fan to work on a given IP. Like, I don't think that having the same taste as your boss is a skill, and I think one of the key skills is sort of learning to understand what the fans value and need from the IP, understanding what makes the IP work to be able to then create more of it. And I think oftentimes that's actually easier to do when you're not in the fandom, because then you're not trying to create more of what you like or trying to recreate a feeling that you had when you were 12. You can take an analytical approach. You can come to have a love and an appreciation for it. Then you're more of a steward of it, trying to carry it forward and trying to bring it forward for people. You're almost more like a caretaker or a parent, and you're less like a recipient of the IP.
I think the most valuable thing that I've learned over the years is that, yeah, you accumulate skill, you gain experience making games, but the one constant, the one thing that you carry over through the years is the people that you meet. And just having good connections, people that you have chemistry with, people that you can trust, people that you can bounce ideas off, people that you can speak the same language. I think that is arguably one of the most valuable things you can have in this industry. So I would advise people to be proactive with attending conferences like these, for example, like Game Access, and just getting to meet people, hearing different perspectives and expanding their worldview away. Because I realized many times for me when I was at the company, at Housemarque, we were working really laser focus on one game, and you get a bit of tunnel vision, you get inside your bubble. And it's good to get outside of that and hear different perspectives and realize that you're not the only one dealing with these challenges in this industry.
So key learnings. Okay, so this is the moment you were all waiting for. So now I'm going to share with you the big secret, right? Big drum roll. There is no secret. That there is no special sauce, right? There's no buzzwords, there's no processes, there's no single solution that will guarantee your success. And anybody who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something, or is driving an agenda. Because making games is complex, right? Working with people is challenging, right? It has opportunities, it's a wonderful thing, but we're passionate people, every one of us is unique. It's always going to be hard in its own unique ways. So in some ways, the ability to adapt is much more important than the ability to plan. The only constant is change, right? I mean, Returnal turned out exactly how I imagined it and nothing like how I imagined it. So you need to adapt as you go. And in the end, if you're chasing that high quality, you're pursuing greatness, it doesn't come free. Your resolve will be tested. There are no shortcuts. So internalizing this, accepting that there is no secret, can actually be quite liberating, because it releases you from thinking that you're always doing something wrong, right?
Yeah, I think that was, the game is the boss. And I think ultimately, we all have a dream, we have some ideas. Maybe stubbornly we think that, oh no, that idea I came up with in the shower, or that idea I wrote down on a napkin is like the coolest thing ever. But then if you put it in the game and you see that it's not working, then you need to listen to that. You need to play test the game, you need to be in tune with what the game is telling you. And sometimes you end up having too many things in there. Sometimes you neglect the game and it feels the pacing is off, or some things aren't clicking, and I think you need to learn to just respect and look after, care about the game. It's like an organic living entity almost. It's evolving every day, and I think many times you can also get like tunnel vision, get too fixated on some goals and lose sight of like the big picture. And that's why it's really important to play test the game as often as possible, keep it always in tip-top shape, and always gather the team, play test together. I think that's where you get a lot of the sparks flying, not just when you play it by yourself, but when you play it with different kind of viewpoints, perspective, philosophies. That's when you get a lot of the creative kind of flourishes.
Actually, I spent a good deal of time today walking around in the hall and admired at what people have done. And it's a little bit like graffiti. It's different in different parts of Europe. For instance, in Barcelona, they have their very own distinctive style compared to, say, Estonia, for instance, or Great Britain. And same thing applies to the graphical output of game programming teams. And now that I saw what is happening there, I'm probably able to call a Czech product, or let's say this area product, from everything else. They have their own vibe.
Our game's called Omnibolet. It's a puzzle with some tower defense and automation elements. It's been released in February, so now we are presenting the final version, more or less. Some people already knew it because we've been to the previous game accesses and other conferences in Czechia, and some people are new to it. Overall, the response is very positive and we're happy.
We've got a game where you build a train. By building your train, you build cards, a deck of cards, and then on a grid, you try to pull off the most tactical, strategical moves to destroy your enemies. We've got a code name of the game, which at the moment we call it Fogpiercer, inspired by Snowpiercer, but we are thinking of changing it. And we've got two other thoughts about the name. First is Fallen Flag Express, and the other is Redemption Railway. We'll see where it goes.
My advice would be to find your own tone of voice, and with that I mean when it comes to storytelling. And the game, despite how simple the game is, it should always have some kind of a story behind it. Of course, when you're talking about tic-tac-toe or chess or something like that, it doesn't require that much of a story. But right away when you step into the area of bringing in people or characters within the game, then you need a good story. And that's where it all comes from. That's what makes the game, the end product, the IP, rememberable, memorizable, and you plant seeds in people's mind through that.
There's something I'm forgetting. Something important. Something's not right!
I actually like to be very much in, because that's when I'm able to deliver my best. And that means that although I'm not working on the game on a daily basis, or maybe not even on a weekly basis, it's still beneficial for the end product and myself to be in with the meetings, for instance. And with Alan Wake 2, I have plenty of meeting material that helped me through the first stages and things like that. And I wonder if any of the game developers actually realize how much information can be exchanged in the very, very, very early stage before, I'm repeating this, before the composer is actually needed. Because you may feel like it's pointless, maybe time-consuming to have your occasional nerd sitting quietly in the corner of a room, but you're able to ditch out approximately 2 weeks to maybe 2 months of development time because the guy already knows what he's doing when he has to do what he needs to be doing. I'm trying to preach this to developers over and over again. And maybe at some point somebody else will notice the same, what I have noticed and what Remedy has noticed. With every project since Alan Wake. Alan Wake was the first one with which I spent 5 years. And very early on with Quantum Break, very early on with Control, and now Alan Wake 2, and now the following projects as well. It feels like I've already landed in that world, in that place, with those people that are in the game. And yeah, take note, you need to have your composer in there very early on.
Is there some game soundtrack that you admire?
Actually, there is quite a few. There's Alien Isolation, which I love a great deal. It's almost like a benchmark for, you know, survival horror, more or less. Very stylistic, very pure. And then Horizon Zero series, they always manage to make me cry. And I have to say that Baldur's Gate 3 also made me cry. And I was lucky to meet Borislav Slalo in London, and I was able to tell this to him, and he felt like a really, really nice chap. Very huggable and lovable dude. Very, you know, true to his business. Like he feels like a guy who wouldn't do a note without, you know, emotion. And I like people like that.
Yeah.
And then, I was greatly moved back in the day with PlayStation 1 version of Tomb Raider, for instance. That was great. And my gaming days began with Sinclair Spectrum 48K and Commodore 64, so plenty of stuff from there. But that's where the majority of it is.
In 2077, they voted my city the worst place to live in America. Main issues, sky-high rate of violence, and more people living below the poverty line than anywhere else.
So I started as a graphic designer. It's the funny story. I actually applied to CDPR, CD Projekt Red, long time ago as an illustrator, and they rejected me. And 2 years later, I came back and I applied again as a graphic designer, which is my major actually, and I got the job. And I started as a graphic designer. But within the company, I changed my department. I was very sneaky about that. I stayed in graphic design for a year, and 2 years, and after 2 years, I changed to illustration. And I was doing most of the marketing illustration, so I already convinced them. And then I was in the industry, and now I'm working as a senior illustrator for Ghost Story games. So, like I said, I started on iPad and make the sketches. I didn't show all of the versions of it, just showing minimum versions. And then I do the line arts on iPad. Most of the time I do masking on iPad too, but I always finish the artwork on Wacom, always. This one's also started on iPad and switched to Wacom later on. But you know what happened? They wanted me to change the character. So it's we now, not so me. Their most asked question was that they wanted to be like a concept artist or illustrator, but they were afraid that they don't know any 3D skills. They don't have any programming skills. But they didn't know that they could do so many things with their only 2D skills. So I think my speech was, helpful in that way, and I saw it on their eyes. And they told me that it was very helpful, and I'm just so glad that I could answer that question.
I mean, I sort of fell into this discipline of storytelling. I mean, I was doing more commercial work and live action stuff, and then I moved back to Sweden. I was in Los Angeles for a few years, and then I got hit up by Goodbye Kansas asking if I wanted to join, and I hadn't really worked with games and that type of marketing. So. And obviously we get to do really big stuff and fun stuff, so yeah.
Yeah, I can speak to that also. I think he's quite right when he speaks about lottery, right? Because I think you can measure your success in a certain number of projects, right? And for us, I think we started with doing Battlefield 3 intro. That was like our first big thing that was really successful at E3. And then we did the Walking Dead cinematics that got a lot of attention, and that got us into making Cyberpunk, the first one, the announcement trailer, that got super big. And so therefore, like, after that, we didn't have as many like milestones, but Skull and Bones is one for sure. So yeah, I think you can say that you win the lottery at certain projects that sort of gets you to the next level, right?
Initiating combat mode. Go! Destination confirmed.
That's what I'm talking about! We actually contacted them and said, hey, we want to work with you. We have made these trailers for Walking Dead. And they said, okay, that's super good. We want to work with you too. And so that collaboration started, and they actually flew to our office, two of the game directors, and together with our director, Fredrik Löfberg, they wrote the script for the first announcement trailer. So it was a very close collaboration. But after a while we had to tell them, like, okay, now you need to leave because we need to do our thing, right? But at the same time, it was a super close collaboration with CD Projekt Red. And it continued with the other trailers also the same way.
And obviously concept art is something really something that we rely on to sort of figure out the look and the feel of this. So this is one from Till Holder. We used it to sort of plan out, lighting conditions, time of day, the battle sequence. This is pretty close to what we ended up with. So we tend to get really sort of detailed with this stuff. I use it as a base to sort of produce it. This is an early version of the end shot. And again, we use it as sort of testing out ideas. So the final piece was slightly different. So this is an example of that. This is from our conceptor Gabriel Björk Stjernström, an amazing artist. And then our hero Sam. So we got some concepts from Ubisoft actually, and we wanted to see, it is sort of a rags to riches story, right? So we wanted to see him in different stages. So, we get these initial concepts and then we sort of rework them a little bit. And then we go into making a 3D asset. And this is something that we sort of really pride ourselves on at Goodbye Kansas, making really sort of detailed characters. So this is our first pass of his face. There was changes that would come to this, but this is where we started with building his face. And this is a face that doesn't exist really, so it's just made from scratch.
I try to work with the teams. I'll at least be involved or aware of what each of the teams are working on. There's a lot of accessibility or sort of barriers that get added just during the game's design. And so by being involved there, it can sort of look at the possible barriers and then sort of looking at how we can sort of remove them and sort of make the game more accessible just at the design stage. So that's how we try and do it there, and then otherwise it's sort of, in some cases, looking at other barriers, maybe they're having like, and sort of designing solutions and then trying to implement them as well.
And I've actually got a clip here that I wanted to showcase of Sightless Combat playing The Last of Us Part 2.
Oh god. Semi-auto pistol. Pistol ammo. 6. Loaded. 10. Reserve. Silencer equipped.
Cool.
2. Pistol ammo.
Yes! We did it!
Got you, asshole!
So this is Sightless Combat. Like I said, gamer without sight. He's 100% blind. But through the accessibility and the options in The Last of Us, he's able to play the game. But it's not just that he's able to play the game, he's able to play the game the way he wants to play it. This is from his permadeath playthrough. So it's if he dies, that's it, it's game over. But he's able to have that experience. And that's what I was mentioned before about accessibility being about removing unintentional barriers. There's still intentional barriers in the permadeath playthrough that he has and faces, like all gamers, but the unintentional ones of not being able to navigate through menus because there's no text-to-speech or not knowing where to go in the world, that's what accessibility is really focusing on. So how do we do that? How do we make games accessible? The project I wanted to mention today is called APX, Accessible Player Experiences. So this was created by the Able Gamers charity. And rather than looking at trying to make the entire game accessible, which can seem as a bit of a behemoth, It instead looks at breaking the game down into these individual features and experiences that the player has and makes those a little bit accessible. Because then when they come together, the game itself is accessible.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's maybe always a place we can improve, but I think what's been great to see is Xbox and PlayStation have just announced or released their own controllers. So we have like the Xbox Adaptive Controller and the PlayStation Access Controller, and sort of both of those are sort of really great solutions of sort of giving gamers more flexibility to play the way they want to play. And so I think, there's a lot of development and research costs into those, but it's great to see them both releasing their own platforms with different approaches as well to removing barriers there. So I think it's really great to see them do that.
You remember me. I have to finish it.
I really hope you make it.
Dina, watch out!
So I started out as an information systems major, and I was a network analyst for a time and then an IT analyst at a different place. And I found this internship while I was still in school for production, video game production with PlayStation. And I knew that I didn't quite have all of the skill set that I would need in order to go and be really competitive for this internship. So instead I tried to figure out what are the common things in the career that I have now that can help fill out the shape of the role that they're hiring for this internship. And then I also weaved together my story with games. Some of my earliest memories are playing Star Wars Jedi Power Battles with my dad when my hands were too small to touch all the buttons on the controller. And I used that story in my cover letter. And the combination of me trying to fit those points and the bullet points in the job description with my experience, and also being able to weave an emotional story through my experience with games just personally, helped me stand out and get an interview, and then eventually become an intern with PlayStation, and eventually, keep going down that road. So I get there as an intern, and I'm placed on a pretty tough project right away as part of the production team for Death Stranding. Specifically, I was a piece of the puzzle in their environment art outsourcing department, where my team was managing about 10 different global vendors on the creation of environment art assets for the game, and the team was already crunching. So for context, I think everybody in this room probably knows, but just in case, Death Stranding is this really massive AAA game made by a fantastic game developer named Hideo Kojima. And it was his first new game at his new studio, Kojima Productions, and he had recruited some amazing talent in the forms of Mads Mikkelsen, Norman Reedus, Lea Seydoux, Guillermo del Toro, and there were lots of eyes on this game, both internally and externally, and we knew that we wanted our contributions to shine, so we got to work. So a thing that kept coming back to me is a thing that my dad said, which is, I may not be the smartest person in the room, but nobody will work harder than me. And I really took that to heart. So I got in early and I stayed late. Oh, there it goes. And I found people who seemed both non-threatening and really good at their jobs, and I inserted myself into their circles. And I asked them so many questions until they got tired of me. I also walked around with a clipboard or a notebook constantly, and I was taking notes all over the place. And I stayed highly visible anytime I could give an update in a team meeting or do a show and tell or do anything so that more eyes were able to see the work that I was doing. I took that opportunity and I ran with it. And I essentially became a yes person. So in addition to doing things that were part of my regular roles and responsibilities, I was also responsible for getting the team dinner when we were crunching, or I would go to the store and I would get birthday cards or going away cards for people who are having birthdays or leaving the team. And the thing that helped the most is that I genuinely loved everything that I was doing. I, at never point, was driving to work feeling sad or frustrated or upset that I was going to go work on video games. This was definitely a dream job, and I wanted to keep it going. So there were some questions ranging from how do I find mentors to what kind of associations should I join, how do I get into the video game industry, etc. And for the mentorship part, one of the things that I talk to them the most of is you don't need to just go to LinkedIn and say, hey, will you be my mentor? You can just ask somebody if they have time for like a 30-minute chat to talk about, like, for me, I'm a producer, so like, do you have like production questions that you want to ask somebody? Or are you a designer and you want to ask a designer some questions? And then after that, you can see if it's a good fit and if they want to keep meeting. I'm a big proponent of the International Game Developers Association because there's a really big community of people there that are also very much into games, and they're new in the industry. Some of them are also very senior in the industry and will offer to do mentorship and programs. They also run game jams, they give you discounts, they give you Discord access, and that's not the only association that's like that. There are so many more out there that are like that as well, and so you can go find whatever suits you the best and just dive straight into it.
This is one of the best conferences I've ever been to. Games Access has some of the best sessions, fascinating speakers, and I've made some new game development friends, which is awesome.
I absolutely love it. So it's my first time in Czechia, first time in Game Access, and I can promise you it's not going to be the last time. I'm absolutely loving it so far. Thanks to the organizers, it was really smooth. I loved the stage, I loved the crowd. I mean, it was a really great experience.
It's been wonderful and amazing. The organizers have been really thorough and the preparation has been fantastic.
It's a wonderful conference, extremely welcoming.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's sort of some really amazing talks that I've been able to catch as well, and sort of the some of the indie games that they have on show as well. It's really been great sort of walking around and sort of being able to play some of them.
It's very laid back, and people are just wonderfully, emotional and very kind, actually. And I've noticed that there are lots of similarities between people here and people in Finland. Although we don't talk that much in Finland, but still that same warmth is very much present. I like that a lot.
That was Game Access. Now it's your turn. Become part of the story. Join us in Brno, June 6th and 7th, 2025, and experience the epic world of game development for yourself. Find out more and get your ticket at game-access.com.